at least one parent that said they couldn't make it that would love to just have an idea of what the topic was today and what things were mentioned. So if that's doesn't cause any issues at all, that would be great if I can do
I'm not planning on saying anything that I'll regret later on. So,
that. Gary, thank you for being here, and you can take charge.
all right. Thank you, Bill. And it's such a pleasure to be with you and Ms. Applegate. I'm such a huge fan of St. Mary's Academy, and I have never met people associated with St. Mary's Academy, whether it's, you were the first person I met there, Phil, but whether it's you and Ms. Applegate or the parents or the students, I've never met anyone that I'm just not completely impressed with and enjoy being around. So thanks so much for the opportunity. I'm going to actually not say too much because I'm really eager to hear from the parents. But when we talked a couple weeks ago about what might be useful, you gave me some great ideas, and so I'm going to try and speak to some of those areas. What I will just say to start out is,
Gary, can I just interrupt you for 1 second? If everybody wouldn't mind just muting their microphones if you haven't already, and then I will call on you. And if for any reason I get disconnected, Pamela's going to put her Zoom meeting address in the chat box, and then she would reach out to you right away. It's not going to happen, but we just wanted a backup plan just in case something happens where I am. So sorry for that, Gary. I just wanted to mention that so you have the without any noise in the background there.
that's quite all right. Thank you, Phil. What I'd really like to find out about, but I won't because our time is limited. But this is April, as we all know, and April for those of us on the college side means that we're working with a number of different populations. One is newly admitted students and their families, and two, those much like yourselves who have juniors that are either just beginning or certainly still at an early stage in their college search. And so I'm on the phone and sometimes in Zoom meetings all the time. And what I've found to be amusing is, as this unfortunate situation that we're all in across the nation continues, I hear at least once or twice every day from either students or parents, and sometimes people who are literally in the same family. That happened last Friday, where the students are saying, I love my parents, but they're driving me crazy about this college stuff. And then I'll talk with the parents. We love our children dearly. They're the most important things in our lives, but being around them 24/7 is driving us crazy. So I'd love to hear your stories, but we'll have to save that for another time. But it's certainly been amusing to hear from both sides. Let me just talk about a couple of things. You are around your kids quite a bit right now, and one of the things that they really have a great opportunity to do is to work with the information that they would have already received from their counselors at St. Mary's as they begin the process of developing their list of potential colleges and universities. And they really have an opportunity now to go on the websites of those colleges and universities and check them out at a level that in their everyday busy life they might not have otherwise had the time to do. And you can certainly do that right along with them. And I'll just say that the way in which a college or university represents itself in their website is, I believe, somewhat significant. It should speak to some of the priorities and programs that a college or university has that they want to make sure that you find out about without having to click too deeply into that particular college or university's website. I'm not going to refer too much to my own institution, Colgate, because this is not Colgate specific. But I'll just give you one example. We're certainly very proud of the quality of the educational opportunities that we offer. And so we want our visitors on our website to be able to find out about that very soon. We're very proud of the success that our graduates achieve at a very early age. We want them to be able to find out about that soon. So my point is, see what some of the priorities appear to be with the college or university that you're investigating, and you and your child can determine if that's going to be a potential match for her. Let's talk about the application itself, because your child is not all that far away from coming back after whatever we have for a summer and getting those applications submitted. One of the things that I hope your child and others around the country and around the world will be thinking about, I know they're being kept busy at St. Mary's with their remote learning, but still, I think if you consider the fact that they're not involved with the club, they're not involved with the sport, at least not in a direct sense, they may be virtually, it should give them some time to be thinking about that college application essay. And I often say to juniors that a student, particularly at a place where you have to work really hard, like St. Mary's, a student would be doing herself the very best favor in the world if they can come back in August or September and have that college application essay or essays in a stage where it's just about a finished product. We certainly don't think it's a bad idea to run those essays past the college counselors. That's totally legitimate. We just want to make sure the application essays are actually written by the student herself.
Gary, could I interrupt you really quickly? I just want to introduce you to Ishwar, our principal, and just let her just say hello to everyone. I'm sorry for stopping you where you are, but I know she wanted to just say hi to you and everyone that's here today.
Absolutely.
Hello, everyone. Firstly, thank you, Gary, for doing this. I know this is such a unique circumstance, and we so appreciate it. Even as when I wear a parent hat, we're always wondering: are we doing enough in terms of the college process? Are we not? Are we missing out on anything? Are we guiding it? So I so appreciate you joining us this morning. Any insight that you give, we all so appreciate it. So thank you from all of us.
It's such a pleasure. I'm a huge St. Mary's fan, so it's an honor to be asked.
Thank you. And, you know, I want to give a big shout out to our college counselors and, you know, Mr. Gentry, Director of College Counseling, and Mrs. Applegate, because it has been front and center on their minds that, yes, we are delivering a strong program, but junior year is going to be vital in terms of the connections you make. And are we doing all the steps to get them ready for college? So they are on top of it and maybe even a little ahead of others in terms of how they are reaching out to our students, how they are connecting, the one-on-ones. It was interesting. Both Mr. Gentry and Mrs. Applegate said, in a weird way, this is working better because we are able to meet our students for office hours. And I think the things that we are doing, we might actually implement it even if we go back on campus, because these real moments of just doing these one-on-ones and having these writing labs and things have been great. And they'll give you more information, but I just wanted to say that please know, college counseling has not gone by the wayside because of distance learning. It actually has come to the forefront because we know it matters. And big hello to all parents who have joined. I miss seeing all of you. Thank you so much for coming for these events. These events make more meaning to us only because I can see, you know, I just miss seeing all your faces. I really do. So hello and big thank you. Anytime you have any question, if you're thinking what's going to happen with, you know, we will be proactive in providing information on SATs and ACTs and how we are approaching college counseling. But anytime you have a question, that you think, what about this? Please feel free to reach out to our college counseling team. I'm very plugged in the process. Feel free to reach out to me as well. And I'm just saying hello and thank you for joining us this morning. So Gary, you didn't think it'll be 1 minute, right? I'm going to hijack this whole meeting. You ready?
No problem. Everything you said was an important message. And so it was nice to hear you say it. And I'll just say to the parents that it is not common. I do these types of programs quite often. And it's not common to have the head of this upper school involved in the programs as well. And so you're obviously in very, very good hands. Okay, I will continue on. We were talking about the application essay, and it's an important part of the application. It's not actually the single most important part. I will talk about that in a moment. But what I think will be important, and the reason why I led with the essay, is when you are at home, even though a lot of students are still very busy, they will have some time in their schedule where they can begin to think about how they can most effectively answer the prompts that are provided by the major application providers, the Common application or the Coalition application. Don't let that time disappear without taking advantage of it to begin to really develop at a very advanced level the college application essay. It's a great opportunity to do that. What makes an application really stand out? I get asked that question probably more than any other. And at the more highly selective institutions, mine and so many others, it all begins with the transcript. We look at the level of challenge that a student has sought out within their curricular choices that they've made in grades 9 through 12. And obviously, we look at how well they have done in those courses that they have selected. If a student has not embraced academic challenge, there certainly are going to be questions raised on the college end for why that was the case. There's certainly some schools, indeed, I've been coming to Colorado and visit Colorado schools now for well over 20 years. And there's some schools in more remote parts of Colorado where they don't have the rich offering of courses that a place like St. Mary's does have. And so for those students, we get that. We understand that they can only take advantage of the curricular choices within the context of the school that they're attending. But for a wonderful school like St. Mary's that has the faculty and has the curricular opportunities that you have at St. Mary's, we certainly would want to see a student take advantage of that. Another thing that St. Mary's has that we would hope students would take advantage of, and certainly the 3 St. Mary's staff members that are on the call this morning are great examples of that. Students have access to faculty. Students have access to staff and administrators. And so when it comes time for recommendations, places that are on the smaller side, like the one I represent, are certainly going to be looking to see if a student has taken advantage of the opportunity to get to know those teachers, to get to know those that are so important to them in their everyday life, like counselors and administrators, as we read through the recommendations. Why should we care? Why is that important? Well, the best reason to pick a college or university that prides itself, and again, there are so many of them that fall into this category, that pride themselves on the personal opportunities a student has to get to know and know well their professors or their advisors. Those are going to be the kinds of recommendations which will indicate that a student's already taken advantage of that opportunity while she's been at St. Mary's. So hopefully junior year will not end without a student talking to at least a teacher or maybe two, and letting that teacher know that come fall, she is going to be asking them to write a recommendation to accompany their college application. Testing is an absolute mess this year, as we all know. Perhaps some of you as junior parents know that your child may have had the opportunity to take the SAT or the ACT at some point before they were all canceled. But there might be many of you where they simply have not had that opportunity yet. A number of colleges and universities that normally require testing are going to waive that requirement, or going to be test optional for the coming year. And we are one of those. We're certainly not alone. And so while there are still going to be some colleges and universities that I think will maintain the testing requirement, there will be many, many, many that will not. I can't speak for any other institution other than my own, but I think it would be almost unconscionable for any institution that continues to require testing to not understand that the opportunity to take tests multiple times, as students usually prefer to do, will simply not be one that will be easy or maybe even viable for the high school graduating class of 2021. So I would not stress too much about testing. Needless to say, however, come the fall, the SAT said the other day they'll next be offering a test in August, or at least they hope to. Certainly any student who's going to take a test, they should take that test seriously. There's no two ways about that. But again, check out on the websites to see if schools have modified in any way their testing policy. I think you will find that there are going to be a lot of them that will have done that. I think that will probably be the most likely change to the application process for the graduating class of 2021. But for those that require interviews, I'm sure you will find some modifications in that policy. Again, you can go on each website and learn that information for yourself. I'm getting asked about this year's graduating class, and I realize I'm talking with parents, but a lot of people are asking about this year's graduating class. And are there going to be a lot of students seeking gap years, given the uncertainty of when this year's graduating class will enroll in college in the fall? And I believe the logic behind the fact that I'm getting asked that question so much, even by parents of juniors, is a concern that if a lot of students are requesting gap years who've been admitted to a college or university this year, will that mean that there are fewer places open for this year's juniors, next year's seniors, when they apply to college next year? Totally legitimate question to be asking. We won't know for sure what our numbers are, and the Justice Department makes it really difficult now for us to compare numbers with other colleges and universities unless those are publicly disclosed numbers. So I'm afraid I can't speak to too many other colleges and universities, really to any other colleges and universities on that question. What I can say, though, is that I found it maybe a little bit surprising that, at least with us, as of today, April 21st, actually seeing a decrease in students requesting gap years compared to where we were a year ago on April 21st. That's right, a decrease. How can I explain that? I can't. We're all in this for the first time. There's no playbook. There's no prior data with a national crisis like the one we are experiencing as a nation to go back and compare ourselves to. I can't explain it. You want my best guess? It would be this. My best guess is that if that data continues to hold, and if there are fewer students seeking out a gap year, it's probably due to the fact that, in much the same way I started out the conversation, people are ready for the remote learning to end. People are ready for to get back in to classrooms, to get back and see real live teachers in person, to get back and see their classmates, to get back in a more traditional academic setting. That's the only guess I could possibly make. Maybe you have some other ideas. Maybe you're hearing from your senior parents who you might be friendly with, reasons why that might be occurring. And maybe we're the only school where it's occurring that way. I simply don't know. But that's my best guess. And then last but not least, before I turn things over to each of you for your questions, I can't wait for that part of it. How can students make up for the missed opportunities to visit schools? There are a number of different ways. Some of us have virtual programs on our websites for juniors. Some of us are allowing juniors to also participate. In addition to the junior programs, we're also allowing them to participate in the senior programs that we have for April, as seniors at most colleges and universities need to make up their mind before May 1st, which is the typical response deadline for colleges and universities for those high school seniors that have not made it a choice. I know once we get the green light and are allowed to host visitors on our campus, we will be ramping up the opportunities for people to visit our campus. I'm sure many, if not most, will be doing something similar. But once things return to a normal stage, whenever that is, and it could be in a few weeks, it could be several months or more, you and I know probably about the same, and that's as much as we know from the various briefings that we get from the state or the CDC. But once that happens, students will return to their busy schedules. And whether that's being back in school, if it winds up being late summer or early fall or even late fall, if it means being back involved with sports programs and clubs and theater programs and music programs, and they're going to get busy. And so it may simply be impossible for students in the high school graduating class of 2021 to have a visit schedule that maybe they were envisioning 6 months ago. And let me just say that I think most of us, hopefully all of us on the college end, will understand that. We are offices of admission. We're not offices of rejection. We look for ways in which we can really support a student and her family throughout what is a very exciting point in their lives. And so we understand we're living the same life that you and your daughter are living. And so we understand you may not be able to do all that you would at one time plan to do. And we're not going to hold that against your daughter because of the fact that visits or the way in which you had originally envisioned exploring colleges and universities is just not working out the way in which you once had hoped it would. So please don't stress over that. There are plenty of other things that one might stress over, but that's certainly not one that you should. With that, Mr. Gentry, I will throw it back to you, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions and try and be helpful in any way.
Okay, and what we'll try to do, and this will be a little awkward just because we're not in a room together, but I do have one question that's already queued up, and Pamela will help me as well, Pamela, if that's okay. So we'll kind of bounce back and forth. If you have a question you would like for us to ask Gary, feel free to type it in the chat box. You should be able to find that at the bottom of your screen. If you just want to ask a question, you can just go ahead and put in, may I ask the next question? And we'll follow that cue and just call on you. Either way is fine. I do have the first question, and the parent that put this in, if you want to clarify after I say it, feel free to just unmute your microphone and jump in if there's something you want to add. And there's actually two questions, Gary. The first one is for schools, for you being test optional and what you suspect with other schools, if it comes down to two students, one has submitted tests and one hasn't, this has definitely come up with our juniors as we're meeting with them. Will that be a deciding factor, or can it be a deciding factor if one has supplied scores and one has not?
Yeah, that's was actually when we announced our policy, the very first emailed question I received was exactly that question. And there's so much that goes into evaluating a complete application. And so it would be rare that it would come down to one particular item in an application. We would look at 3.5 years because presumably we would have fall term grades from senior year. We would be looking at 3.5 years of academic progress. Again, the transcript is the most impactful part of any application. So that would be by far the most important thing that we would be looking at, scores or no scores. Secondly, we would be looking at the quality of the recommendations. Just to kind of reemphasize the point, someone who goes to St. Mary's, they've got an outstanding opportunity to get to know and be known by their faculty, by their college counselors. Have they taken advantage of that? And if one student did more so than the other student, regardless of testing, that would certainly play a role. Application essay, who gave the most thought? Who really put together a very well thought out, well constructed, interesting application essay? Again, those are the kinds of things we'd be looking at. Impact on one's school and one's community. And I know a lot of people are also worried about, well, what about junior year? We've had this interruption. So is everybody else. Essentially everyone in that regard is still on a level playing field because the entire rest of the country, and for that matter, most of the rest of the world, is put in a position where juniors are going to be very, very limited in terms of how they've been able to impact their school and communities. So that's really going to be a flat factor across the board for everyone. So those are all things that I've mentioned without even mentioning testing. So if somebody's done exceedingly well on their testing and all of the other factors are also very strong, that's certainly going to make for a strong application. If those other factors are not strong or not competitive, but somebody's got a great test score, I would be leaning towards the person who had strong factors across the board, but maybe no testing. So, you know, it really is going to be important to look at the entire application, and then we're going to worry about testing or no testing. but I sincerely doubt that it's going to ever, even with one applicant, come down to, well, this person's got a great score, this person doesn't. There are just too many other factors in the application that would prevent us from getting there.
Thank you so much, Gary, for answering that. I know that, you know, St. Mary's, we're really working hard to continue to provide that stellar education. You know, we are going to keep letter grades of A, B, C, and D because our kids are working so hard. And we want to showcase that to colleges and universities that, you know, they didn't slack off. They are, you know, still doing the classes, still getting that knowledge in order to improve their transcripts. So it's great that you have showcased that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
We do have another question from a parent. It says that SMA has been extremely nimble in dealing with COVID and support has been outstanding. How does college size impact ability to respond to crisis like this?
I think that would depend greatly upon the college. And I'm not going to be self-serving here, so I'm going to talk in abstract terms. But I was talking to a parent a couple of weeks ago who, if you want to think about having hardship with tuition bills. This parent actually has 3 children in college at the same time. That's a lot of tuition to be paying. And the parent was comparing one school's response to the COVID virus in comparison to the other 2. I'm not going to go into too detail. I'll just say I was very happy to hear what the parent had to say in terms of the one school that she was comparing us to the other 2. And so I'm not surprised to hear that St. Mary's has been very nimble. It's really pretty simple. When you think about, at the end of the day, that no matter what, an institution should have safety and good health practices is their absolute top priority, followed very, very closely by providing an outstanding academic experience to every single one of their students. If a college subscribes to that set of principles, just those 2, safety and good health practices, providing an outstanding academic experience. If you look at every single thing you do in the context of, is this enhancing or supporting safety or good health practices, and or is this enhancing the opportunity for a student to learn at the very highest level? I think it really provides the opportunity for places like St. Mary's to be as nimble and as effective as they are. I would hope every college or university would want to look at things through the same lenses.
I don't have anyone in the queue, so if anyone has a question, you could just unmute your microphone and ask Gary directly. And Pamela, if you have any that you're thinking of as well, but anybody that would like to just jump in, feel free. Gary, are there other things beyond even what I sent to you that you just feel like junior parents over the years have asked or you think would be worthwhile for them to think about as their kids are preparing for this exciting time?
Yeah, I want to talk about the fact that I'm really amazed that not enough people ask about careers in kind of general ways. What do your alums do? Those kinds of questions. But before you get to that point, there's a lot that goes into the kinds of opportunities that a student can pursue that would enable him or her to achieve greater levels of success 4 years later when they're graduating. And so I wish more parents were asking me about the opportunities to conduct research with faculty members, and to be able to do that not just during junior or senior year, but to be able to do that maybe even as late in your first year or early on in your sophomore year. I wish I was asked more often about the kinds of support that we offer for students who want to pursue internships. And internships in a wide variety of fields. There are lots of businesses that offer internships. And we're very proud and very eager to be able to talk about them. But there are students who want a career other than business. And so what about the opportunities for internships in nonprofits? What about the opportunity for internships with governmental organizations? And then ultimately, as a student is progressing towards their senior year, I like to be asked flat out, what is your level of success? Give me some measurement by which I can compare to other colleges and universities how well Colgate University recent graduates do in terms of their placement into graduate schools, into jobs and professional opportunities, or into fellowships, things like Fulbrights or things like Watson's. And those are the kinds of questions that I think are very important. I think most colleges and universities through their career services office would have a percentage of success achieved in one of those areas by their recent graduates, maybe within 6 months or so of their graduation from that particular institution. And I think a parent has the right to know that. And then I'm just going to do one other thing real quickly, Phil, and I will say that neither Mr. Gentry nor Ms. Applegate know that I'm going to be talking about this. And I may even make them uncomfortable by doing so, but I'm still going to just make a real quick point. And that is, why did each of you as parents send your children, your daughter, to St. Mary's? You did so that they could get a great education, but you also did so presumably so that their lives outside of the classroom could be supported in ways that are truly extraordinary as well. And that is something that occurs at St. Mary's with your college counselors. And I urge you to take advantage of that. I realize some of you may have hired an independent counselor, and I am in no way going to trash independent counselors. But what I am going to do is say, why in the world, when you have two extraordinary people as college counselors at St. Mary's who've been doing this for a while, who know what they're doing, who are real pros at what they're doing, who have the opportunity to be around your children during normal times, each and every school day, who really have the opportunity to get to know students well, why would you want to turn that search to somebody else may not have had their training and experience, or even if they did, who are simply not around your kids to the extent that the counselors are at St. Mary's? I realize some of you are still going to do that anyway, and that's certainly your prerogative, but that you will defer to the advice, to the counseling that you're receiving at St. Mary's, because I can assure you that it is based upon strong experience, relevant experience, but most of all, having the benefit of being around your child frequently and having just one thing in the top of their mind at all times, and that is the best interests of your child. So that's all I wanted to say about that, but I thought it was worth saying.
Thank you, Gary. That's very kind of you. We do have 2 more questions in the queue, and I know we're getting close on time because you have a meeting coming up, but let's see if we can maybe catch these. The first one was about the admissions scandal last year, and just wondering what you see, and if maybe a minute or 2 about just kind of things that are in place now to help schools, students, parents all know that things are on the up and up, and those things are not a concern for students and parents.
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually had an outside legal firm come in and do a top to bottom audit of our practices. I'm very happy to say that we got a clean bill of health. Nothing at all like what you read about at some of the other institutions occurred at our institution. However, I always thought it was a very vulnerable area for those of us, and my institution is one of several hundred across the country that has an NCAA Division I athletics program. And so that sometimes means, in order to support those programs, that a student can receive the support of a coach. And if that student who's being supported by a coach is otherwise competitive, he or she can receive preference in the admission process. It's our way of supporting the sports that we operate at the Division I level. Not an uncommon practice. Again, several hundred schools across the country do that. Whether they tell you they do that or not might be another thing, but they do it. What I was always worried about was what we saw occurring at some of the other institutions, that a coach was improperly representing a student for admission and getting personal gain out of that representation. What we have done, and what I think many other institutions have now done, is I'm blessed. I work with outstanding coaches. I trust every single one of them. I truly do. But that's not good enough anymore. What our institution has done, what many others have done, is to actually prove that a student they are supporting is, in fact, possessing the level of talent and ability that they are purported to. So, we don't have water polo as a varsity sport. I'll use water polo therefore as an example. Let's say we find out about a water polo player who's the greatest water polo player of her graduating class of seniors across the country. Well, it's not going to be good enough anymore for the water polo coach to simply say that to me and for me to just operate on that information as gospel. We are now going to require proof, independent proof that that is actually the case. So that's one major change that I know even institutions that were found to be clean in terms of their operational practices has adopted.
Pamela's going to ask one more question, and I know parents, I do have Gary's contact information. If you have questions after we're done today, I can reach out to him for you, and I'll check with him as well about contacting him. But Pamela, if you want to ask that last question before we finish.
Sure. So when students are talking about different activities that were maybe canceled this spring or that they're not able to participate in over the summer, a program they were accepted to or a sport that they are, could have been a captain of, how should they explain that? What should they put on their application, their maybe resume or common application?
Well, certainly if they were elected to positions of leadership, but weren't really able to carry out that leadership. As far as I'm concerned, it's legitimate to put down on an application. It would raise flags if we were reading about a particular team from a school, and all of a sudden there were 9 captains of the same sport. So as it's kind of like the admissions scandal, but in reverse. A student always, whether there's a pandemic or not, need to remember that they are certifying that everything they're putting down on their application is true and accurate. So, but if something, no matter what it is, whether it's in a sport or a club or anything else, was compromised. Maybe they started a cool internship that 1 weekend had to end because of social distancing policies. We're still eager to hear about that. But just to put everyone's mind at ease, again, I want to emphasize just about every junior everywhere in the world is going to be in the same position in terms of experiencing levels of compromise during, at the very least, the spring term of their high school experience, junior year. And so we get that, and we're going to certainly take that into consideration. And just to finally say, Phil, I think the world of St. Mary's, I really do, and I would welcome hearing from any parent or any student at any time connected with St. Mary's, even if they're not interested in Colgate. There's no requirement that they're interested in Colgate, because I have so many happy memories of coming to St. Mary's, and have been working with you, Phil, for longer than either one of us would like to admit. And so more than happy to hear from folks.
Gary, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I wish we were in a room where we could clap for you, but I do want you to know how much we appreciate you taking the time this morning. It means the world to me, and I know the parents really have appreciated hearing from you. It helps so much to get a insight from the admissions side, and in this challenging time, to know we're all in it together, and parents, we're here for you. Pamela's here for you to continue to support you as we move forward. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for taking the time today to spend the hour with us, and check in anytime. So thank you very much. And Gary, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank Ms. Applegate. And most of all, thanks to the parents, because I love talking to you both, but it's a much more interesting conversation when we have parents around to listen.
That's for sure. That's how Pamela and I have felt in these last few weeks. Those are energizing moments when we can actually be in the Zoom rooms with parents, Zoom rooms with kids, and really feel like we're back at school. So it's been great. And I really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Take care. Be well.